Tonight, my guests are Billy and Lily Doran, who are going to be speaking on one of my favorite subjects, paleontology and dinosaurs. See you in about 5 minutes. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good evening, everyone. How is everybody? Oh, I hope you're all good. I'm good. I'm excited about tonight's guest. My name is Charlotte, and I'm going to be your host for the next hour or so. I am also the owner. Let me get my breath here. My allergies are real bad. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California. We are 45 strong up and down the state of California, which means if you think you have a paranormal issue going on, we can get to you. We may be a couple counties away, but we'll get to you because we have people spread all over the place. We've also got branches in Nevada, Washington, Oregon, and Hawaii. So if you need help, just let me know. Just head over to the, California Haunts website at californiahaunts.org and shoot me a message. Or head on over to californiahauntsradio.com or check us out on Facebook. You know, there's like 2 California Haunts pages there, as well as my profile, which is public. Anyhow, if you're watching from Facebook, speaking of which, please and you like what you see, please hit that follow button. And if you're watching from Twitch, please do the same thing and hit that follow button. Now, if you're over on YouTube and you like what you see, there's a little ghost down in the bottom right-hand corner with a magnifying glass and a Sherlock Holmes hat on. Hit that, and that'll make you a subscriber. Because if you look through all those videos, there's close to 280 videos over there of different topics. And I think there's something you'll find that's going to interest you, and a little bit of something for everybody over there. Okay? All right. I want to make an announcement, and is that we are setting up another ghost hunt. And I don't have it's a date to be determined, but we're going to be taking out 6 lucky people on an actual ghost hunt of a haunted hotel with us. And you get to mess with our equipment, not mess with it, but actually use the equipment that we use out in the field. We'll train you how to do all that, work the cameras, and all that good stuff. We're going to train you how to set all that up and do all that stuff. We're going to teach you how to be investigators. So it's a hands-on learning thing, okay? You can learn how California Haunts does this, and it'll help you when you go out, even if you're just going out for fun, because we'll show you how to do proper EVP protocol and things like that. All right, so that's going to be coming up. I still don't know the date. I'm also still working on that project with that nice lady that was on who was drawing portraits of the dead, and we're working on a giveaway for that. So that would be 1 portrait, and we're going to have raffle tickets so I can raise some money for California Haunts. Sounds cool? You like that idea? Okay, cool. I like the idea too. Just this a little bit before we start. Tonight's guest, when I was a kid, I don't think there's a kid in this world who doesn't get into dinosaurs when they're little. You know? I really don't think there is. There might be. But I remember when I was little, I had this enormous book of dinosaurs. And I'm old, okay? So to give you an idea, when I started getting into dinosaurs, there were only like 5 major dinosaurs. 5. And now, I mean, it's just crazy. Even I get lost. You know, I see these things on KVIE, or I see them on Discovery Channel, and I'm like, what are those? Where'd those come from? But it's people like our guest tonight, Billy Doran, who hunt down these things and dig them up. And the best thing about what Billy's doing, he's out there in Colorado, which is a hotbed. It's always been a hotbed. Ever since I was a kid, it was a hotbed. Okay? But the beautiful part about what he's doing is he's got a museum where where he has bones, and all the artifacts and all the fossils and all that. But he also takes people out on digs, so you can get a feel for what it's like to actually find a dinosaur and how they bring the bones out and all that stuff. Because I remember the old days when the pictures always had these guys, these Indiana Jones looking guys, leaning over these bones, with little hammers and chisels and snapping, chip, and then out would come the plaster of Paris, and they'd wrap the bones up, and then they'd haul them out with something, and put them in a truck, and off they went. So it'll be interesting to talk with Billy to see how much that has changed, and how the dating, the new dating systems they have for this. But his goal is to bring about awareness of the past and the dinosaurs, and to get people more into it and involved. And I think it's wonderful. I think it's great. Okay? So anyway, getting back to my little past. I remember my mother was so impressed because, Disneyland, when you take the train, and they have the part where you journey from the Grand Canyon and into the primeval world. My mother was so impressed because I could name every dinosaur in there. You know, well, at that time, that was just about practically every dinosaur that they really knew about. And so Walt Disney got it right, you know. But now I couldn't. Now I can name those, and of course your Velociraptor and all that, you know, because of Jurassic Park, of course. But I mean, anything beyond that, and there's just so many of them, I can't name. So anyway, I'm just trying to say, uh, I'm excited to talk with Billy tonight because I'm just really, really into this stuff. Anyhow, I'm just looking at something really quick. Okay. And let's bring Billy on before I get distracted again. How's that sound?
All right, Charlotte.
Hello,
Hey,
sir.
how's it going?
Oh, it's going good. I'm so excited tonight.
Yeah, me too. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
This technology stuff, I'm a bone digger. The technology kind of goes over my head sometimes. So I want to make sure you can hear me okay. You know what? You know what's funny is you're absolutely right. I grew up like that too. There was like 5 dinosaurs. There was like maybe 5. And now I think to date, I think that they've discovered something around 700 or something like that.
It's crazy.
So it's crazy. And at this rate, like with a lot of the digging going on in China, for example, they're finding new species practically every month. Like it's insane how many things they're finding. And, they still think that there's 500, I say they, kind of the science, if you will, they kind of guesstimate that there's another 500 that haven't been found yet. And another 100 or so, maybe more, that'll never be found for whatever reason. They didn't fossilize. They're under lava beds. They're under New York City. For whatever reason, we'll just never find them.
It's so exciting. It really is.
Yeah.
It's so tremendous. Because I mean, like you see, there are 5 major dinosaurs. I mean, you go through anywhere. Like I said, that Disney ride. The pterodactyls, they're staring at you. You got Tyrannosaurus Rex is there, Stegosaurus is there, Triceratops. And it's just so incredible to me now to hear the names of these things and see them, in the mock-ups that they have.
For example, like a dinosaur like Triceratops. We all grew up with Triceratops. The 3 horns, the big frill. Well, now, just me personally, I've dug up bones from about 4 or 5 different horned dinosaurs, cousins of Triceratops. And there's horned dinosaurs that go back millions of years before Triceratops. And, the world of the horned dinosaurs is enormous. And that's just one type. So it just gives you an idea how much we're literally just scratching the surface of what's still to be found out in the prehistoric world.
Tell everybody about you and what you do.
About me?
Yeah.
You know what? I have a varied story, I think. I've worn a lot of hats, and you mentioned the whole Indiana Jones hat. This is, you will see.
I was noticing that.
Practically wearing a hat like this. And
I was noticing that. I thought you put your Indiana Jones hat on for me.
You kind of earn your hat. This hat, I bet I've dug up a dozen different dinosaurs with just this hat, plus crocodiles and stuff like that. Your hat kind of becomes your field mate, your buddy in the field, because this is what saves you from a scorched head for sure is your hat. So that's definitely a big part of it. So Indiana had it right with the hat. That's a big part of it. But I've worn, again, theoretically, I've worn a lot of hats. I've been a professional photographer. I was an actor. I was a TV personality myself. I was a ditch digger. I did plenty of construction jobs. I clean up after horses. You name it. I've probably done it in my resume somewhere along the line. But I kind of fell into paleontology 14, 15 years ago as a professional sort of angle. I always loved it. And to those folks who are watching or listening right now, who might be able to sympathize with this, I never thought I was smart enough to be a paleontologist or a scientist for that matter. There was classes I didn't do great at. I was not a bad student. I just wasn't an out of this world student for whatever reason. I was a kid growing up who could tell you everything in the woods of Virginia that slithered, crawled, hopped, stung, flew, swam, you name it. But if you put a biology test in front of me, I'm probably going to fail it just because. So I never chased that field when I was in college. It wasn't until kind of later in my adult life that I really started studying heavily via the internet, via a lot of books and stuff like that, self-teaching. And then I think part of it is I got really lucky. I went out on my first kind of self designed expedition, if you will, here in Eagle County, Colorado, in an area that I've been looking at for many, many years. And for whatever reason, just because it looked like a cool fossil spot. Fossils are always found in sedimentary rock, whether it's sandstone or mudstone or siltstone or shale or something like that. And this area had all those elements, and I'd always had it in my radar, but never checked it out. It was a kind of an inaccessible area. It was you had to walk several miles just to get to it on the other side of a river that was pretty high flowing. You couldn't just cross it. And I finally walked up there one day and planned it out, and I started finding dinosaur bones within about 30 minutes. And it was an absolute luck of the draw, I think, really is what it was. They say your luck is what's opportunity and knowledge combined or something like that, something to that effect. And I had been working on a TV show here locally for a few years, and I'd been looking for interesting interviews. And one of the guys I'd been looking at was a guy named Kirk Johnson, who was head of the Denver Museum of Nature and Science at that time. And so I'd already built up a little bit of a relationship. So I sent some pictures. I said, "Hey, Kirk, I think I found some dinosaur bones up here in Eagle County, right down the road from Denver." And he kind of responded going, "Yeah, probably not. You're up in the high elevation, the high country, they call it, literally where the ski resort towns are. And there's really not many areas that we found bone-bearing rock layers. So I probably not. But I'm coming through in a couple of days. I'll stop by and check out what you found." His first words were, "Holy, you got dinosaur bone." And I said, "That's what I thought. So that's kind of in all my studies and all that kind of stuff." He goes, "No, you don't understand. They're not supposed to be dinosaurs in Eagle County, in the high country of Eagle County." So that kind of just started the whole thing. And it's grown into an absolute passion. And I get to get out of bed every day and be a kid every day.
That's fabulous. When you're telling this story, I'm thinking about Josh Gates when they went after the woolly mammoths, and they were way up in the mountains.
Yeah.
He's hanging off the cliff by a rope, and they're digging up to these mammoths.
I saw that episode. Yeah, and you know what? That's not too far off of the first expedition I got invited on by Kirk Johnson, who's now head of the Smithsonian and also one of the hosts on PBS for a lot of the Earth science shows. He's an incredible guy, like amazing and great on camera. And we went to dig over in Snowmass next to Aspen, Colorado. They discovered this massive treasure trove of Ice Age fossils. And among them, we ended up digging up 3 woolly mammoths, 44 mastodons, ground sloths, camels, bison, horses, you name it. It was an incredible. But yeah, that show, Josh Gates' show, is great. I mean, that was watching him do that. I was like, yeah, been there, done that. You see bones just falling out of the hill, and your mind is just explodes. You're a little boy again going, "Oh my God, this is prehistoric stuff just sitting here," and it's overwhelmingly amazing.
I have a question. When you look at Jurassic Park and you see the first scene of the area where the professor is working, towards the dig, how realistic is that?
In my experience, is not very realistic. I know there's new technology, but part of the problem with fossils is, especially when you get into dinosaurs, they've mineralized. They're basically rock. So like in the movie, when they were doing blowing those sonar things down, and on the computer screen, it showed this beautiful skeleton. First of all, that doesn't happen. You never see a skeleton beautifully laid out like that. You might see a part of a tail or a leg, but that skeleton, generally speaking, I'm not saying it never happens, but generally speaking, skeletons are in pieces. They've been scavenged before they've been buried. They've been shaken apart under those layers for millions of years of earthquakes. Skulls are hollow, so they're imploded and busted into 100 pieces. Teeth fall out. So that kind of scene is it's a beautiful scene. But as a paleontologist or a dinosaur hunter, that's a dream come true that you'll probably never see. Because of the mineralization, there's really not a lot of technology, I think, that can sink sonar waves down in the rock and separate a dinosaur bone that has mineralized into stone next to another stone. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're just going to show up as rocks. So, and I think that's one of the things that I've always loved about paleontology is that I'm not a technologically advanced guy. I love technology. It's fun. It's great. But I love paleontology because you go out in the field and you're doing it the same way they've done it for 150 years. It's the weight of a backpack on your back. It's ropes. It's manpower of carrying that thing out. It's using your eyes to find it. It's tedious work. You were talking early in the show about the tediousness of paleontology, and I wanted to show this is one of the latest versions of a National Geographic. This is on the stands right now. It's just all about dinosaurs. And page 5, which I didn't even know this was out until someone messaged me this morning. Page 5. There's myself.
Look at that.
And my friend Gussie McCracken, and there she is. And that's how it's done. We are literally tediously poking away at the rock. She's putting a little bit of plaster on top of a bone. I think I'm excavating one of Triceratops's relatives right there. But that's what I love about it is it hasn't changed. You no matter the fact that we have rovers on Mars doesn't change the fact that you got to hike up that hill with all your water and all your plaster, and maybe you'll find something. And then when you finally find the plaster and put it all together and put it on that bone, you got to carry it back down. So I think that's one of the things that's so cool about it. You really have to still earn it in paleontology, which I think is something really neat.
This is something that I always wondered is once the plaster's on the bone and you guys get it back to the museum or wherever you work on it, how are you able to not break that bone when you were trying to get the plaster off?
It might get broken sometimes, but the goal of the plaster is to keep everything that's there
intact.
Because once you're in the wonderfully sterile environment of a lab, anything that falls out is going to be right there. So you're not going to lose anything. And generally speaking, it's called jacketing. When you find a bone, you excavate the top of it. You reveal enough of it that you can see what it is. You can see where the edges are, and then you kind of dig under it, and you make this pedestal, kind of like a mushroom cap. And the mushroom cap is where the bone sits in any residual rock that holds it all together. And then you plaster over that cap and underneath that cap. And when that hardens, you flip it over, and then you put plaster over that little part where the stem would be sticking out. And then you have everything that's right there confined in that plaster jacket. And once you get it back to the lab, things may fall apart, but you have it all right there. Because there's people, thankfully, whose only job and their only desire is what they love to do is sit there and put things tediously back together. I don't want to do that. I'd rather hike the hillsides and with the heavy backpacks and bring it back to the lab, and they can sit there and tediously put it all back together. But the jacket just brings everything from the field back to the lab, so you're not losing anything.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's, how come there's certain areas that are more of a hotbed for bones than others?
Well, that's a great question. And part of it is there's this simplicity in that, depending on where you are. For example, once you get west of the Mississippi, things get drier. Forests aren't as thick. You look at a forest in anywhere from New England down through Maryland or Virginia into the Carolinas, you have these thick deciduous forests. You have ferns, you have thick leaved plants, you have skunk cabbage, you have these heavy trees with big leaves, And then you get out in Colorado and you have evergreens and aspen and sage. It's dry, it's arid. So it literally can come down to, on the East Coast, you have millions of years of dirt. You have millions of years of trees and forests that have fallen down and broken down, and you have millions of years of dirt. In Colorado, in the Western United States, you have these dry, arid areas. And you also have the uplift of the Rockies for the most part, and which is also be similar in the West Coast, like by the Sierras and stuff. You have these mountains that are pushing up, and they're literally, because of the dryness factor and the totally different forests, you have entire hillsides sometimes of exposed rock, just exposed rock, which is a lot of the stuff I've found with, as far as, for example, footprints. There's areas right down the street where I live, and I've lived in Eagle County for 33 years. But all it takes is a heavy spring runoff of snowmelt or a couple really heavy rainstorms, and I can walk in an area that I've been for 20 years going up there, and just enough dirt has washed away that I'll see stuff that's sitting right there because of the dryness factor. Yeah, so that's part of it. And the other part of it, honestly, Charlotte, it's just where layers of rock have tilted to the surface. It's like the whole United States, even mountain areas and non-mountain areas, is made up of layers, just like the layers in this magazine, And it all depends on where those layers are pushed up to the surface as to what areas are being exposed at the surface. And if they're the right layers that have bones in it, you're going to see stuff. So it's just a matter of stuff being not covered in cities and concrete and asphalt, and not being covered in millions of years of dirt, and having those layers being right at the surface where you can see footprints or pieces of bone falling out.
Yeah, because like I said earlier when the show started, it always seemed like Colorado, even when I was little, was a hotbed for it all.
It is. Well, it's the Western United States. It starts all the way up in Canada, and Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota. North and South Dakota are incredible. South Dakota is the center of the universe for Tyrannosaurus Rex. They found more stuff in South Dakota from Tyrannosaurus Rex than any place in the whole world, or I should say not the world, but in North America, because T-Rex is a North American dinosaur. It's not found in other places of the world. So that was a bad analogy. But and it goes all the way through not just those areas, but then into Colorado, into Utah, down into New Mexico, and then all the way to Texas. Texas has incredible dinosaur discoveries in those areas. They have some of the biggest and best trackways ever found are down in Texas. So it really goes all through the entire Western United States. It's not just Colorado, but yeah, there's a lot here. And thankfully, the stuff that I'm finding is increasing our knowledge of not just history of Colorado, but the history of Eagle County, Colorado, right up here in the high country, in areas where there's not supposed to be dinosaurs, and we're finding lots of stuff. Yeah. I mean, to date, let's see.
Another question I have too is this.
Go ahead. Can you hear me? So what I was going to say is, so to date, let's see, I've been digging dinosaurs here in Eagle County for 13 years, or prospecting.
It's like, okay, if the T-Rex is
yeah, I'm kind of losing you a little bit. I can't hear you. If you can hear me, I was going to say I found fossils from about 12 different dinosaurs, plus crocodiles and turtles and sharks and all kinds of cool stuff like that. Did you lose me?
I gotcha.
There we go.
Must be something big happening. The internet's having issues.
There's probably a meteor going across the sky right now.
Everybody in this neighborhood has Xfinity, and so when something big happens, sorry about that.
Xfinity.
But like I was saying, as far as food supply, I mean, are you guys able to tell by location with these dinosaurs why they're there? Why there's a concentration of them as far as food supply would be?
Well, I don't think it's so much the food supply, because they basically they were all kind of eating each other. There was a lot of chowing down going down. I think it's a lot of it just they were just a lot here, and specifically, for example, one of the hardest parts about Colorado, or even the Western United States, is people forget that during almost all of the time the dinosaurs were here. I mean, they lived the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous. That's about 170 million years of time. Okay. And the asteroid hit 66 million years ago, right at the end of all that. And the Rocky Mountains show up only about 4 million years before that.
Okay.
So most of the dinosaur time, there was no mountains here at all. It would have been like the Sahara Desert during the Triassic. It would have been like the inland waterways of the Carolinas during the Jurassic. And as the early Cretaceous came around, it would have been deciduous forests and evergreen forests and stuff like that. So you get an area where you just get a lot of great sedimentary rock, I think, is a big part of it. And so a lot of those dinosaurs are preserved in that sand, in that mud, in that maybe volcanic ash, but not lava, but ash. And they're just preserved in that, I mean, here in Colorado, you can go hike anywhere practically in the mountains of Colorado, and I could almost guarantee you're going to come across a deer skeleton. You just are. There's deer bones out there. And so during the dinosaur time, there would have been skeletons all over the place from animals that had died naturally or been fed upon, one of those two, and they would have been buried pretty naturally from floods or, some kind of sedimentary thing happening, shifting sand or ash falling from a volcano. So you just have lots of skeletons, just lots. And there's a lot of time involved, millions of years. That's a lot of skeletons.
Well, I was going to say, we've been taught over the years that the extinction of these things, it's always like they happen practically overnight, but that didn't happen overnight.
No, no. For example, here's a good example I like to talk about, which is interesting. Tyrannosaurus Rex, probably the most popular, is the best Hollywood agent of any dinosaur.
Mm-hmm.
Tyrannosaurus Rex, of the 170 million years of time that dinosaurs lived, T Rex showed up the last probably, give or take, 4 million years, give or take a million years. Right at the end, that one dinosaur was here 3 to 4 million years at the end, right there. So if it was here for 3 to 4 million years, let's conservatively say there was a million and a million or 2.5 million T Rexes that hatched out of the egg, made it to adulthood, and died of old age or for whatever reason. Okay. We've only found skeletons or semi-complete skeletons from 15.
Wow.
15. And maybe another random tooth or bone from another 100, let's say, give or take. So it's 115. And these are kind of conservative guessing out of 1 million to 1.5 million animals. So it's a real treasure when you do find something. Absolutely. It's absolute jackpot lottery to find anything from dinosaurs,
Right. Let's talk about your museum. Tell me about your museum.
The museum at Dinosaur Junction here in Edwards, Colorado. It's a passion project. I basically, about 8 years ago, through all my expedition work with the Denver Museum, with National Geographic and other organizations, I got to a point where I had all these friends who had kids. I don't have any kids myself. And they would ask me, hey, come over for dinner and tell us what you found. My Johnny's dying to know what you found. Do you have any pictures or anything like that? And so I realized that obviously there is a lot of interest in it because it's very cool to see pictures of a big horned dinosaur while it's still sitting in the rock. You were used to seeing it in the museum, but what does it look like when it's still sitting in the rock? Mm-hmm. And so I realized that there was a kind of a desire for this information, so to speak, and living in a resort town here up in Eagle County, and near not far from Vail, the ski resort, and Beaver Creek, for that example, we have people all the time asking, especially in the summertime, where can my kid go to dig up fossils? Where can my kid go to learn about dinosaurs? And so I kind of about 8 years ago, I rented out a vacant lot down the street, and I built a kids' dinosaur camp. I built a big, quote unquote, dinosaur quarry, filled it with sand, and I would seed it with shark's teeth and ammonite fossils and all these things. And that just blew up. And I had all these families, and we're in our 8th year with record numbers every year, climbing numbers. And amongst that, I realized that, as I'm finding more stuff right in this area, and like I said earlier, I don't know if you guys heard me, we kind of cut out. I've found fossils from about 12 different dinosaurs in the last 11 or 12 years, from stuff about this tall to stuff that was over 100,000 pounds. Meat eaters, plant eaters, Stegosaurus, Allosaurus, Brachiosaurus, Ankylosaurus with the sledgehammer. These are all animals that live right down the street, plus fossils from crocodiles, sharks, turtles. And I realized that, in all the years, in the 33 years I've lived up here, we're a little bit removed from things up in the high country. We're in these little mountain towns. We don't have stuff at our fingertips. We usually, a lot of these towns close down early. We don't have, all night food places. We don't have museums to go to. And some of the greatest museums are right down in Denver. Denver Museum of Nature and Science, Dinosaur Ridge in the town of Morrison, the Morrison Museum of Natural History. These are great places. And to the west of us, we have the museum in Fruita, Colorado, right near the Utah border. And all those areas are an hour and a half either direction. So we're an hour and a half from all those places sitting up here in the mountains. And I thought, God dang it, we should have our own museum. I'm finding so much stuff literally in our backyard. And so I kind of started this rough kind of fun museum at the kids camp that was more for the kids could enjoy it while the parents were dropping them off. And then all of a sudden I had people dropping in. When we drove up from Denver, we heard you had a museum. And I went, oh, geez, now the pressure's on. And so we had people emailing us we're coming out from New York. We're going to be traveling in Colorado. We're going to come see your museum. And I'm like, wow, like this is getting some steam. It's starting to get a little momentum. And so that was about 3 years that I had the museum literally in these giant old military tents, these old Vietnam era tents that were 30 feet long and 18 feet wide, and these big canvas tents. And they were hot as hell in the summertime. In the wintertime, the snow would practically crush them every winter. But we made it work. And then this year, I thought, we need to really bring this to the next level. And we're able to find literally a school right in the middle of Edwards here in the little town of Edwards that had not been used in like 3 years. It's an old elementary school, and we're able to take over the cafeteria, and then we're hoping to get the auditorium in a couple of years. But it's this giant room that we moved everything into, all of our beautiful glass cases with fossils and big replica pieces. And then the county and the community is so supportive and so excited about it. We raised quite a bit of money pretty quick. And now we brought in these giant skeletons. So we have these huge life-size skeletons. One of them's 51 feet long. One of them's 30 feet long. And we have all this cool stuff. Allosaurus, Camarasaurus. We have some raptor stuff. We're bringing in a T-Rex this winter. And the community is right behind us 100%, plus all the guests that show up. But if you want to check it out, it's dinosaurjunction.org. And we're growing rapidly. And the goal is in the next few years to be a bona fide paleontological lab up here in the high country, and hopefully to be kind of a satellite place for the Denver Museum, as they do stuff in Utah or places west, that they can be a satellite museum where we are. And we can all work together with Dinosaur Ridge, with the Morrison Museum of Natural History, with the Museum of the Rockies in Fruita. And it's just this giant thing where we're all like-minded people that we want a betterment. All we want to do is better the knowledge of dinosaurs. We want to entertain. We want people that are excited about the subject to be able to just submerge themselves in it and be like, oh my God, stand under these skeletons and just be overwhelmed by them.
I have a question about the skeletons now. Yeah. Where do you get those?
So it's great question. So everything that I've found to date is for the most part all on BLM land. It's on Bureau of Land Management, government land. And I need excavation permits to remove those things. So everything I found is still sitting in the hills, literally just still sitting up there. I know where every one of my dinosaurs is. I know where everything is, whether it's a tooth or a whole skeleton. I know where they are. I GPS mark everything, but I also know where they are because those kind of like my kids. So what we do is when we know what we've found, when we're able to identify what it is we have found, we then go to these various companies, and there's quite a few out there, and they do cast replicas. They have a whole catalog of dinosaurs. So most museums around the world that you go to, you're not looking at the real bones. When you look at those massive skeletons, you're looking at replicas, because there's a couple of factors involved. The real ones, it's rare to find the whole skeleton. So you would see a skeleton with a lot of bones missing. And the other thing is they're so fragile, rare, and heavy that to try and put the real ones on display, it's a huge undertaking. God forbid something happen and the roof collapse and that skeleton's toast. It turns to dust. So a lot of museums don't have the real things. The Denver Museum of Nature and Science is one of the few that does. And their prehistoric journey is incredible. That's an amazing staff there. And what they have is really, really cool. But most museums, you're looking at replicas. And so there's companies that do those. And then when they show up as a 1,000-pound crate, you have the most amazing jigsaw puzzle to put together.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that because the Monterey Bay Aquarium has that big whale.
Yeah.
And then kind of hanging from the ceiling. And I thought, okay.
Yeah. I don't know about that one. I mean, right. that's if that's all real, that is one heck of a support system holding all that up, because one whale vertebra is pretty heavy. Yeah. The chances are it's probably a replica because it's hanging from the ceiling. God forbid ever gave way and fell to the floor. But I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah, I've always wondered about those because even in San Francisco at the Natural History Museum, they have a couple, and I always wondered, if they were real or not the whale, but I mean just dinosaurs, or if they were real
in general. Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, often when you find a skeleton, it's not all there. Very, very little of it is there usually. And often if you find a skull, the body's not there. You find the body, the skull's not there. So it's very rare to find the whole thing. And then you look at, like, for example, in World War II, the bombings in London, the bombings in Berlin, those just completely decimated all the natural collections of cities' museums that were in all those areas. Mm-hmm. Completely destroyed. I mean, just recently, they're finally getting a good handle on what Spinosaurus, the famous Spinosaurus dinosaur, really looked like. The original one found, I think it was found in the late 1800s or early 1900s, was completely decimated in World War II. It just turned to dust. All they had left was photographs of it. So, there's reasons they don't put the real stuff out in a lot of places. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So for your museum, when you do find something, how do you go about, like you say, you got to deal with BLM. So what happens? You locate it, then you have to notify them, or how's that work?
I locate it, and then because paleontology and fossil hunting, there's a real gray area around it, and there's a lot of attention that's brought to it, and often that attention's not positive. You get people that want to steal stuff. You get people that want to chip away bones. They want to steal footprints. They want to try and sell them on the black market or on eBay or something like that. And I totally understand why the BLM has the whole permit thing set in place. I totally get it. It can be frustrating at times. But what I do is when I find something, I photograph it. Well, I photograph whatever I can see. I don't dig. I say I dig up dinosaurs and I prospect for dinosaurs. I might dig down a few inches to see what might be there, but I'm not digging several feet into the ground to try and bring this bone out because I can't do anything with it and I don't want to ruin it. So I'll look to see what's there. And then generally, because we're in the mountains, you have a lot of hillsides. When a bone starts peeking out, it starts crumbling and bits and pieces start sliding and falling down the hillside. And that's your first inclination that there's something there, is you start finding bits and pieces of bone. And you literally backtrack up to where it's coming from and then see what's there. So I'll collect everything that's on the hillside. I'll spend hours collecting stuff that's even the size of a pea and get everything I can get together. And I'll carry a few plastic containers with me and I'll put everything in there, screw a top on, and I'll bury it in the hillside where it came out of. I just bury it and I'll GPS mark it and I'll take some photographs. And then what I do is I connect with someone at the BLM or someone at the Denver Museum, for example, just to get on someone's radar to say, hey, I found this thing here. I just want you guys to know, because it's just a weird thing. You don't ever want to start being questioned that you're stealing stuff, that you're, black marketing things, that you're, saying you didn't find anything and it's wrapped up in your car under the tire well or something like that. So the first thing I do is I say, hey, I found this. What do you want to do? I'd love to have a permit so I can excavate it, but you're not going to do that for me right now. But I want you to know that this is right here. So if you want to send someone from your office out to try and preserve this, awesome. But if not, I just want you to know it's here. And generally speaking, that that's any government entity, they're very busy. They're often overwhelmed. And when it comes to dinosaur bones, especially in the Western United States, they're all over the place. There's a lot of them. And so they have no necessary, when I say they, the BLM, they have no necessarily any kind of concern that what I found is anything so spectacular. So they're not going to rush out.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I do. I just put it on someone's radar and then I leave it there. There's stuff when I go hiking in an area that I've been prospecting here for 12 years, I walk by stuff that I found 12 years ago and it's still sitting there and I can't do anything about it. And, now that we have our official dinosaur museum, we have our brick and mortar museum, the museum at Dinosaur Junction here in Edwards, I think we might have a better chance to get an actual permit from them that'll allow us to go out and excavate. And instead of that bone turning to dust, we can carefully bring that bone down to the museum here in the Middle Eagle County, and it can be on display for families and guests to see, and it can be studied. Or if it's something they already know everything about, at least it can be appreciated by people who like dinosaurs, instead of it sitting up there and just turning to crumbled dust, which is what's eventually.
Well, I was wondering how that worked because in the area I live in, there's a lot of Native American. There were a lot of Native Americans.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because people stuff, it's a whole different story when it comes to people. Whole different story. If you're in a construction site, for example, here in Eagle County or most places, if you come across human, everything comes to a stop. Legally, that's it. It just stops. And in fact, but usually when it's dinosaurs, or not even when, usually it's when it's dinosaurs, it comes down to the decision of the people who own the land. They can either say, if this is a multi-million-dollar project going on, no, you're not going to stop. If you want to dig those bones up, or maybe I'll send someone out to dig them up while you're working, but this production's not going to stop. It's their call. They don't have to stop for dinosaurs or even ice age stuff like woolly mammoths. They can just barrel right through if they want to. But people is a totally different thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So how many times do you go out looking?
I usually go out, honestly, I'm very happy to say I don't get to go out that much in the summer because I'm so busy with my kids' camp. I get hundreds of kids all summer long. I said I don't have kids earlier. I don't need kids. I got hundreds of them every summer, and then I get to have fun, digging fossils. So I'm so busy with the kids camp. I do dinosaur shows in Beaver Creek Village, in the ski village up here in Beaver Creek, both summer and winter. Winter's pretty funny. You literally see people standing out there holding their skis in the middle of a snowstorm, asking questions about Tyrannosaurus Rex. So I do these shows up in the village, and I'm in my 7th year doing those. So I'm busy. I do 3 of those a week. I do the kids a couple times a week. I do private fossil hunts and fossil digs, and then I have the museum, which when I have any free time, I'm at the museum, walking kids through, walking families through. So I don't get to do a lot in the summer, and that's okay because summer is so hot that I don't want to be out in the field when it's 110 degrees. So as things taper off this summer, we start getting closer to fall, I'm going to slow down with the kids camp. The museum will probably slow down a little bit. The shows in Beaver Creek will stop, and that'll be my time to like get out and go look for stuff. And in areas that I've been looking every summer I've been looking. But like I said, all it takes is a little bit of snow melt and some rain. And we've had some terrific rains here in the last few weeks. So I know I'm going to find stuff in areas that I've been for 12 years, but have seen nothing. So that's when that's going to happen, when things cool down a little bit. And I'm so excited because that's my favorite thing to do is be out there looking, even if I don't find anything, it's the excitement of the hunt and what you might find, which is great.
Sure. Let's talk about the kids camp, because I know when these big shows come, these big dino shows come, like the Sacramento, they always have a little digging area for kids, so they can find fossils. What's your kids camp like?
So our kids camp is it's in Walcott, Colorado. And I don't know if any of your viewers have ever been out to Eagle County in the Vail area, but it's the I-70 corridor. All these little towns are right along I-70, and it's just a couple miles down the street from Edwards, Colorado. And I basically have it set up kind of like a paleontological field camp. When you go out with a museum or an expedition with a museum or a university or something like that, you go out into the field and you're out there for many weeks at a time. It's often shifts of people that come and go. Sometimes there's a few people who are there the entire time, but you're out in the middle of nowhere for many weeks. And so they usually set up a field camp, which consists of 2 major big tents. One of them is the utility tent with all your tools and all your supplies and plaster and things like that. And the other tent is your kitchen tent, which has all your water and your food and your kitchen stuff. And then people set their tents up around the outskirts of that. And that's kind of a way a field camp is set up. So our kids camp is set up much like that. It gives the kids, when you show up, you get the sense that you're in Jurassic Park. There's these giant tents and there's all this stuff around. And it's very kind of expedition looking, which is cool because, in all the years I've been doing it, I kind of feel like I've lost the facade looking at it, maybe because I'm so used to seeing it.
Right.
And it's often that thing what is that cliche that you can't see the forest because of the trees or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so every now and again, I'll get a family that shows up and the first thing they say, they're like, this is like Jurassic Park. And I go, thank God, because I've been looking at it so much. I'm afraid it's not cool anymore. But the kids love that. And so we have these big tents set up with underneath them. One of them's like a presentation area. I do these shows and I have big replica pieces of Tyrannosaurus Rex and parts of Stegosaurus, and we pretend we're paleontologists and we figure out how these animals use these pieces of their body. What did Stegosaurus use those big plates on his back for? What did he use the spikes on his tail? So I let them process it and figure out, and then they get to think like paleontologists. And then we have a big dig pit, which is about a big circle of sand about 30 feet in diameter, and there's life-size replicas of T-Rex bones and skulls and stuff. And then I seed that with all kinds of different shark teeth, like ancient fossil shark's teeth or ammonite shells or little chunks of bone or just things, brachiopods like clams, things that kids just love to find. And I bury it all. And each camp, we go in there and you excavate. You start looking for the T-Rex and you see a part of the skull and you start bringing back the sand to see the whole mouth. And as you're doing that, these fossils are popping up. And then I'm there with my fossil book and I just love doing it. So I'm like a kid. So I'm excited. I'm like, oh, you found a brachiopod or you found a crinoid. And I'll open the book and go, that's what it looked like when it was alive. And they're like, oh my God, they're losing their mind because they found this thing. Even though I planted it, they found it. And they're like, oh my God, this is so cool. And then behind camp, there's a whole bunch of land back there that's privately owned. and this incredible guy here in Vale named Patrick Churchilla, and he runs a vineyard called Vines at Vale. Great place, terrific guy. And he's given me permission to take kids out on his property, and we find stuff out there. We find shark's teeth, we find beautiful shells, we find ammonite things. We've actually found mosasaur bones, the big giant reptile mosasaurs. And since it's private land, he's like, you just go, and if you find something, put it in the museum or let the kid keep it, whatever you want. Because when it comes to that kind of stuff, with BLM, you need permits. But if it's private land, whatever the landowner says is law. So, and it's just a lot of fun. It gives the kids a chance to kind of be a paleontologist and just have fun asking anything they ever wanted to know about dinosaurs. It's not a kind of camp where you just drop kids off for the day and the parents go and do whatever. This is a camp where kids who like dinosaurs go to, and that's it. So it's really, all the kids are among like-minded kids, and there's great friendships created, and it's just a lot of fun.
Do you run any kids like me, that were really into that stuff and could probably, kind of like the kid in Jurassic Park, who can tell you a few things?
It never ends. I kid you not. There's absolutely days where I learn from those kids. Because like I was saying earlier in the program, they're discovering so much stuff all the time. I can't keep up with it. And so these kids will come in and go, what about blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, thinking in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I don't know what the hell it is. Then later on, I look it up. I'm like, oh my God, he was right. They just discovered this one like last year or something like that. And so it never ceases to amaze me how much I can learn from them because they're so excited about it. And it's a place where they can show up. I've had kids showed up dressed like paleontologists. I've had kids showed up dressed like me. I've had kids showed up with their dinosaur books, and they are like so ready to go. And it's really that much fun. It's pretty cool. And then you get these kids who are so young that can barely say the word yellow, but they can rattle off Parasaurolophus no problem. So that's always funny to watch too.
Do you think the movies have given paleontology a huge boost?
I think so. Absolutely. Yeah. I think without a doubt. I think movies, all the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World movies, I think even going far back as Indiana Jones from all the way to the first one of Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think they gave a huge push to the whole idea of searching for our ancient world, whether it's ancient people or whether it's ancient animals. Mm-hmm. I think that they've given that big lift and given a huge polish to the realm of science. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that the natural sciences are something that was probably kind of overlooked or underlooked, I should say, for a while. And then when those movies came out, I think there was just, kind of like when Top Gun came out, people were lining up to fly fighter jets. And when the Jurassic Park movies came out, kids were they could finally fly their freak flag that they liked dinosaurs, and no one can make fun of them because here was a movie making hundreds of millions of dollars because everyone wanted to see it. And I think it definitely gave a big boost to it for sure.
Now, here's a question along that line.
Yeah.
There's scientists out there that are trying to recreate the woolly mammoth. What do you think of that?
I think we're gonna see woolly mammoths in the next couple of years for sure. Mm-hmm. And that's a crazy thought.
Right.
That's a crazy thought. There's gonna be a point where you're gonna turn on the news and they're gonna go, here's a woolly mammoth. It's living, breathing, and eating hay at a zoo in Minneapolis. And you're gonna be like, what? But it's gonna happen. What was it? It was just only less than 3 weeks ago, they found like one of the most well-preserved woolly mammoths ever found. It was some gold hunters in Alaska, I think, and they found a baby woolly mammoth, and babies weren't completely covered with hair. And that thing looked like it had been buried for a couple months. When it thawed out, it had rosy cheeks on its skin was pink, and it was like, oh my God. And that goes way back to the 1800s. There's ranchers and farmers in Siberia that for centuries prior to the 1800s had found woolly mammoths, and they thawed them out and fed them to their dogs. That was just what they did. Oh yeah, another woolly mammoth. They didn't know that there are these extinct things that were so precious. They were just these things they came across all the time as the ground melted, and they fed them to their dogs. So, I think we'll absolutely see them in the next few years. I think we'll definitely see woolly mammoths probably first. And I think along those lines, as that progresses, there's a good chance you're going to see the giant ground sloths, the saber-toothed cats, the cave bears, the giant short-faced bears, those animals that were just massive during the Ice Age. As far as dinosaurs, I can't say never. I mean, I can't say never. Who knows what we're going to discover tomorrow? They actually have found some dinosaur bones. They found T-Rex bones that were 67 million years old and still had tissue that you could and let go and it like bent back. Technically soft tissue. It was not usable DNA, but who knows what computers will be able to do in the next few years. They could fill in all those sequences of stuff that's missing. So I don't know that we'll never see dinosaurs. They won't say, I can't imagine we'll see them in my lifetime, but it's exciting. And, you know, and then you get that question that you hear from people all the time. Well, do you think they should be doing that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't think it's about that. They're going to do it. This is, you know, this is the 21st century. It's all about the almighty dollar. If someone can create a T-Rex, they're going to make $1 billion in like one day. Of course they're going to do it, you know?
Well, it's like that last, not the last Jurassic Park movie, but the one before that one, when they brought them over from the island and they were auctioning them off as war weapons, you know? So somebody's going to do this. Somebody's going to make money off these things if they make them. That's what's frightening.
Absolutely. It's not a matter of should we, it's they're going to do it no matter what.
At some point,
it's just a matter, would you pay $50 to see a woolly mammoth?
Yes, I can honestly say I would. Yeah, absolutely.
I certainly
Make
would.
my money.
Whether it's an actual true woolly mammoth or a hybrid, I want to see it for sure. I've dug up woolly mammoths. I want to see a living one.
Absolutely. So, in looking at everything that you have found so far, what do you think is the biggest find that you have had?
That I found, gosh, you know what, Charlotte? I've been so blessed. And for someone that's not a PhD or a schooled paleontologist, I've been blessed. The people I've met, the people I've known. I mean, I've shown up in so many of these incredible magazines like National Geographic. I can't even ask for more. And even down to the discoveries, I've dug up pterosaurs, the flying reptiles. I've found bones from giant marine creatures. I've dug up Tyrannosaurus rex's cousins, Teratophonius, who lived about 7 million years or 10 million years before T-Rex. I found one of the largest Teratophonius teeth ever found in Utah on one of our expeditions. Yeah, he looks like T-Rex. He looks like a smaller T-Rex is what he looks like. But I think as far as some of the most amazing discoveries I personally have made, Allosaurus is one of my favorite dinosaurs because it's the first one I ever found bones from. And I found those bones only about 5 miles from where I'm sitting right now. And along with the bones were footprints. Another one of my favorites is a dinosaur called Pentaceratops, who looked like Triceratops, but he also had a huge spike on either cheek. So he had 5 instead of 3, so thus Penta. And we found that on a Nat Geo expedition in Utah with the Denver Museum. And I was, funny story, you know, you always find stuff when you're going to take a pee. So I've been working on this baby dinosaur in an area. We were way in the Badlands of Utah. We were 50 miles from any kind of civilization. And we were working on a baby horned dinosaur that we had found. And I had to go, I was going to take a break, go pee, whatever. And I'm hiking around and I'm coming back to the group and I look down in this big washout in these Badlands, and there's this huge beak. It literally looked like a bone version of a giant parrot beak is what it looked like. And in real life, that big chunk of bone would have been covered with keratin, like our fingernails, to make it would have looked like a giant parrot beak. And what it was the beak of a horned dinosaur called Pentaceratops. And we found that out later because where I found the beak, I looked on the hill and there was all this bone material coming down the hill. And so I figured this had to have broken out of the hillside up there and rolled down. And the greatest thing, and this is the coolest thing about paleontology, I just happened to be there at that moment, and that beak was sitting right there. If one rainstorm would have come by, it would have washed that away. It would have been gone. But it was right there, and it was 76 million years old. And I happened to be right there when it was sitting at the bottom of the hill. And I worked my way up the hill, dug into the hillside. And to make a long story short, the whole thing was there. This whole dinosaur had died and just fallen like an elephant that just went straight down. And the head was just kind of sitting like this. And over millions of years, dirt and rock built up. So the whole thing was smashed down. And as millions of years of erosion in Utah occurred and rainstorms dug away these badlands, the first thing to poke out was the beak. And it broke off and fell down the hill. And I happened to be walking through at that moment, And there it was. And that's one of the things that's magic to me about paleontology, because now I am part of that animal's whole story.
Wow.
I just breached or I don't know, breached, connected. I don't know what you just bridged 76 million years of time. And I'm now connected to that animal. I'm the first living thing to find it. I'm the first person to brush away the dirt and have the sunlight rest on its face in 76 million years. The whole thing was sitting there. It took us a year and a half to get the skull out. The skull is sitting in the Denver Museum. The body is still in Utah. We would have had to remove the equivalent of about a 3,000 or 4,000 square foot building to get the body out because of the steep hill that it was on. And so when it comes to the horned dinosaurs, the difference in the animals is in the heads. The bodies are kind of interchangeable, for lack of a better word. So we just left the body. So that was an incredibly exciting thing to find, because as we started removing the rock and the dirt, the thing was kind of laying sideways. And I'll never forget the day that I brushed away the dirt and I was literally staring into the eye socket of this huge skull. It was sitting on its right side, so the left eye was just sticking up at me, and it was just this open hole. And I'm looking at it going, oh my God, like I'm part of this animal story. And there's this huge horn coming out, a huge cheek horn. And as we removed more, the giant frill was there with these huge spikes that folded over. It's like looking at a gigantic version of a dinosaur toy, and it's right there in the rock. So that was one of the most exciting things for sure, was that.
Absolutely. Let me ask you about dating these things. How are you able to get the ages on them?
The ages, well, me personally, I have the luxury of being able to refer to the PhDs that do all that. And a lot of that, honestly, like even in areas around here that I go prospect, I have the luxury of the U.S. Geological Survey, which has been going on for over 100 years. You know, look at like the Lewis and Clark expedition. They were surveying all of that area. They're laying out the maps of the United States of America. And within a lot of those U.S. Geological Survey maps, you can any one of your viewers can look up any map of the United States and zoom in on any part of that state, whatever state you want to choose, and it'll show layers of rock within whatever county it is you want to zoom in on. And they'll tell you, is it Ice Age? Is it Jurassic? Is it Triassic? Is it Permian? And then if you get an idea what those levels are, then you go in and start looking. But they measure all those things, and that gets into a process that's kind of above and beyond me. That's chemical. It's nuclear. It's radioactive dating. It's all this stuff that's beyond my pay grade. Honestly, I just I put a lot of faith in the science, but I absolutely believe in the science myself.
Okay.
When it comes to that, yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you say to people when somebody walks up to you and says, "Okay, you're a dinosaur guy, so what?" What do you say to people who get
so what
and excited? What? Yeah.
You know what? I absolutely. I've had many kids, teenagers that have come to my shows, or even older brothers and sisters of kids that have come to camp, and they don't care at all. They're like, yeah, whatever. And you know what? By the time I'm done, they're so into it. They're so excited, and they're asking so many questions that I'm like, all right, I did my job. And all I did was share my information and excitement with them. I have parents, not necessarily parents, I've had adults that come up to me. I've had the conversation with people who don't believe in dinosaurs. Mm-hmm. I've had the conversation with people who believe that the earth is 7,000 years old. I've had all those conversations. And you know what? I love talking to people. I absolutely respect anyone's belief in anything. If you believe it, fair dinkum. If you believe that you're going to sprout wings and fly in a couple of years, more power to you. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to happen, but if you believe that, then if that's what you need to get through your world, more power to you. So I've had conversations with people who get into that kind of semi-religious thing about prehistoric stuff and ages of things. And, that's like we reserve the right to believe what we believe. And I respect everyone's belief. I may not agree with it, but I'm going to certainly respect if that's what you believe.
You have a magnetic personality for this stuff because you enjoy it so much. And
I feel like a child, yeah.
I can see how you can get the non-believers to believe. Like the teens that are like, oh God, whatever.
But you know what? Tell you what, even if you get a parent that comes up to you that they're not sure, they don't believe them, if you hand them a giant prehistoric megalodon tooth and they
Oh,
hold it in their hands, they're going to go, oh my God, I don't even know how to respond to this. Yeah. So they kind of speak for themselves sometimes.
here's a question. That's probably the last question we have tonight. When you're walking along and you're looking for these bones, how can you tell that it's a dinosaur bone as opposed to just a petrified wood or something?
Yeah. Great question. Generally speaking, it comes down to having the trained eye. And the trained eye is something as simple as when we were children, at one point we walked down the beach and we didn't know what a shell was
Mm-hmm.
until we learned what a shell was. And then we can recognize a shell versus a rock versus a piece of seaweed. And then bones, bones have their own kind of recognition. I mean, I can show you this piece right here, and you might think, oh, that just looks like a bone. But if I show you, there's things in here. There's holes. I can show you the shape of it. You see that hole?
Mm-hmm.
This is the lower jaw of a triceratops, is what this is. And that hole right there is where nerve endings went right all the way through this jawbone. So there starts being details that you recognize that are not just a rock. If I show you an ammonite shell, this is a fossil. This is 100 million years old. That's not just a rock. That's a shell. That's something you can't argue that is. And this one's cut in half and polished. That's why it looks like that. But that's a fossil. So it just comes down to kind of honing in on what it is you're looking for. And when it particularly comes to dinosaur bone, if I had a dinosaur bone and a rock, I could show you the difference between the two, and you would start recognizing that difference. In fact, I have a chunk right here. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but I'm going to hold it up. So this is a chunk of dinosaur bone, and you're looking at it going, it's like a rock. It's just like it's like a rock. But if I show you, this is the outside. It's very smooth. And if I show you that white crumbly stuff, that's the marrow. That's the fossilized marrow right there. So you start looking at things that, and you can see it. You can literally see it in the rock. You're looking at it going, well, that's definitely not a rock. It looks like a stone sponge.
Mm-hmm.
And what would a stone sponge be doing in the Rocky Mountains? So then you kind of like start. You can see it. It's just you start recognizing the difference. But again, all goes back to there was a time when we were children walking on a beach and we didn't know what a shell was until an adult pointed out this is a shell. And now you can't walk down a beach without looking at even pieces of shells. Mm-hmm. Giant little structures and pieces. Oh, those are pieces of shells. Well, you're recognizing it as a shell and not just something. So
I went through that myself as a young teen on fishing trips and arrowheads. Trying to tell it was an arrowhead and stuff, and finally figuring out what an actual arrowhead is. Because
I've never found an arrowhead. I've never found an arrowhead in my entire life. In all of my hunting, I've never found an arrowhead. I've never found a shark's tooth on a beach, ever. But I find them in the Rocky Mountains. So you never know where your lucky spot's going to be.
So that's the last question for me is, so at one time, what that tells me with the Rocky Mountains were underwater at one time.
Totally underwater where we are. It would have been like a Caribbean Ocean. A shallow, beautiful tropical ocean. And we find shark's teeth from many different kinds of sharks. We find giant bones from prehistoric reptiles. We find coral reefs and pieces of coral. I find clam shells that are 5 feet across. Clam shells at 8,000 feet in the Rocky Mountains. So yeah, that definitely tells me this was underwater.
You know what? This hour went by. I could sit here all day and talk to you.
It goes by fast. I'm happy to come on anytime you want to have me.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to have to do this again.
I'd love to, Carly.
How can people find you, sir?
So you can contact me through our website for the museum called dinosaurjunction.org, and also through the kids' website. The kids' camp is Fossil Posse, FOSSILPOSSE, fossilposse.com. I'd love to hear from any of your viewers and watchers and answer any questions that I might be able to help you guys with.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And again, I will definitely be in touch with you because I could sit here for hours.
Charlotte, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. I look forward to it. Take care, everyone.
Okay. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye bye. All right, guys. That was too cool. That was really, really cool. I got to put my knowledge to work all those years of pestering my parents. Tomorrow, David John Oates is going to be with us from Australia, and David John Oates has done studies on reverse speech, and he's done reverse speech on some very interesting people that I think you guys will be fascinated by. I'm not going to say what because I'm not going to give it away, but that'll be our usual time at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Um, if you like the show, please do follow. Hit that follow button on Facebook. Hit that follow button on the other stuff. My mind's like yelling. I'm still thinking about dinosaurs. If you like the show, hit that follow button on Facebook. Hit that follow button on Twitch, and click on that little ghost with the magnifying glass down there in the right-hand corner if you're on YouTube. Um, I just can't say so much. This guy has so much enthusiasm, and he draws you into what he's doing. I wish I could go to Colorado and go and like go to his fossil camp thing because that would be really cool. But anyway, tomorrow, like I said, David John Oates will be with us. Reverse speech we're going to be discussing. Anyway, if you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 people anyway. We're just trying to give followers equal opportunity here at California Haunts Radio. Visit us at californiahauntsradio.com. You'll find all our shows there. Plus, you'll find our Blog Talk shows there because we were on Blog Talk for about 10 years before we even decided to do this format of the show. So we've been busy for a long time doing this stuff. Hang on. Okay. Anyway, I want to thank you all for coming. And you see that ticker down at the bottom of the page? That's because California Haunts does not take any money to investigate. It's all out of our own pockets, actually my pocket, because I'm the owner. So if you could find in your heart to help me out, that would be great. I want to keep this show on the air. We've been on 2 years. I didn't know if we were going to be on this long, but for the people that have helped us out with funds, thank you. I want to thank you all because we wouldn't be here without you. There's just no way that we'd be here without you. So for the rest of you, no, I'm not kidding. But it does help to get those extra funds in. So if you could drop a little at paypal.me at California Haunts, that would be great. Or if you're uncomfortable with PayPal, we do have a Venmo that's California Haunts. But I would really appreciate it. I've got internet bills just like anybody else and all that good stuff. Anyway, I want to thank you all for coming, and I'm going to give you his contact information before I leave. And here we go. Let me get this over there. There we go. And here we go. Websites, fossilposse.com and dinosaurjunction.org. Okay, well, I will see you guys tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Have a nice night. If it's Monday or Wednesday night, then it must be California Haunts Radio Night. Please take this time to gather. This is how my day... If it's Monday or Wednesday night, then it must be California Haunts Radio Night. Please take this time to gather some popcorn, hamburgers, hot dogs, even dinner or whatever.